Hi everyone, we're going to talk about the Python standard library functions today. So in many programming languages, there are going to be what we call built-in functions, which are part of a standard library. And what that means is that instead of us having to figure out how to do something complicated, um, even something like an absolute value, which we'll see shortly, you might have something built into the programming language to do that for you. And that way, millions of programmers don't all have to figure out how to do an absolute value. There are some that are going to be built into the programming language, which are the ones we're going to talk about today. There will be additional libraries that will extend the functionality of Python for a number of different areas. So if you're doing hardware programming, there may be a library that does hardware programming. If you're doing, let's say, statistical analysis, there may be a statistical analysis library. I saw an estimate online that there's 137,000 Python libraries, and I do not know all 137,000 or even 0.1% of those. So let's take a look at some of the different functions that we would find in here. Now, this table kind of outlines some of those basic functions and what the results would be if we were to run them. I'll leave this here just so you can come back and look at this. At this point, I'll add a link back to this timestamp in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. But let's take a look at a couple of common functions. These ones are considered some of the basic functions. We have absolute value, or abs, max and min, round, and integer. And today I'm going to show you the absolute value function, the max function, and the round function. So the absolute value function can be used to get the absolute value, which of course is just the positive version of a number. And it can be used to get the positive version or the absolute value of a variable or just a plain number as we see here. So for example, if we were to run this, the answer would be 1043. The absolute value of negative 1043 is positive 1043. So this code snippet, and we'll run all of these together in a moment, this code snippet would show you how you would calculate an absolute value. This function might have a use if we were saying maybe we want to do a square root, which will be in a later video. You don't want to do a square root of a negative number because that would cause a runtime error as your program was attempting to execute that. So what you could do is, before you do a square root, for example, let's do an absolute value. So this would give us 1043. And you can see that one value goes in the parentheses there, and that's going to be called an argument. We also have functions max and min are just about identical, 2 characters difference. In this case, you can see I'm setting the variable hinum equal to the maximum of 102, 55, and 10. In this case, that would be 102. You can do this with as few as 2 values or as many as you can fit onto, into a program. There probably is some sort of theoretical limit somewhere. But effectively, what this would allow you to do is find the highest number in a list of values, which certainly can be useful at various points. And the round function is going to be the one that's going to be a little different because it can be used in 2 different ways. First of all, you'll see that in this case, it has one argument, one value in those parentheses. And if we were to say round this number, in this case, the answer would be 25 because it's going to round that to the nearest whole number. So we could certainly also use that to round to a certain decimal place. And what you're going to find with Python sometimes is your values end up being, having 15 decimal places or something like that. You may want to make that a little easier for your users to read. So you could also round to a specified number of decimal places. And this is how you would round to 2 decimal places. So you can see the only thing that's changed from that previous slide is that I went in here and said comma 2. And what that's going to do is say round to 2 decimal places. So if I wanted to round it to 1 decimal place, I would put 1. If I wanted to round it to 5, I would put 5, and so on. And then we would say print out this rounded value. So if we look at idle, what I've done here is I brought in this program, and I've taken that code from the presentation. And remember, I'll make a link available to GitHub, which will have some of these programs available for you. So if we look at this and we think about what should print out, the first one should print out 1043. Second one should print out 102. Third one should print out 25. And the fourth one should print out 25.45, which is going to be that number rounded to 2 decimal places. And let me just put these next to each other. So you can see 1043 is the absolute value of negative 1043. 102 is the highest number from that list of values. 25 is this number rounded to 0 decimal places. And 25.45 is this number rounded to 2 decimal places. So there are, a few built-in functions. And again, we have a list in that previous location in the PowerPoint, but you will also find that there are, libraries for things that you didn't even know you needed. Graphical programming has libraries, randomization, which is great for games, has libraries, and so on. So it's not only we're developing our own code, but it's also going to be how can we use some of the stuff that's already built into these programs and work a little smarter, not harder.